I can't look at him no more. I got too many good-looking men outside there sitting around me. I don't need this ugly son of a. Listen, here's the deal. You're an ugly son of a. Son of a. Son of a. Son of a.
Angela has always been a larger-than-life character on 90 Day Fiancé, bringing drama, intensity, and unforgettable moments to the screen. But behind her bold character, there were some personal issues that started surfacing in ways impossible to ignore. Now, Angela's recent journey toward rehab and counseling is a big surprise to fans who have always seen her as a strong personality. But a closer look reveals how Angela's health and relationships have been strained, especially as she's dealt with substance issues that have affected her life. Decades of smoking, heavy drinking, and a relentless cycle of personal challenges have taken a toll on Angela. Over the years, it became clear her health was slipping, with fans noting her changing appearance and a visible exhaustion that hinted at something beyond just on-screen stress. The years of pushing through pain seemed to catch up with her all at once, leading to this critical moment of self-reflection.
Did you tell my daughters all women are stupid?
So what do you expect me to you now? So what is it?
Let me tell you something. You better get your ass and get your. You want us to get fucked? Duck up. Duck up.
Angela's road to rehab is paved with years of struggle that started long before she set foot on the 90 Day Fiancé stage. Fans witnessed the ups and downs of her relationship with Michael, who often found himself caught in the crossfire of Angela's personality. The pair's intense arguments and emotionally charged moments became a defining aspect of Angela's storyline. But behind these on-camera issues, Angela was dealing with personal battles that weren't always visible to fans. Her health had been quietly going down due to long-term alcohol use, excessive smoking, and what many people considered as ongoing stress that added fuel to the fire. Angela's choices off-screen soon began affecting her physical and mental health in ways that couldn't be hidden from cameras. Her signature chain smoking and frequent drinking became more than just lifestyle habits, they became visible markers of a deeper struggle. Her skin lost its healthy glow, and her weight fluctuated. These signs were not lost on her family and close friends who had been quietly witnessing her slow decline for years. Angela's grandchildren began noticing the changes too. Her personality was slowly being replaced by a person struggling to keep up with her own life. While Angela always came across as strong, the reality was a ticking time bomb, one that her family feared would eventually explode. Angela's health had become such a concern that her family started pushing for her to seek help. As time went on, her dependence on substances like alcohol grew more apparent, showing up not just in her physical appearance but in her behavior as well. Instead of taking the family's concerns seriously, Angela brushed them off with her characteristic stubbornness, unwilling to see the problem everyone else saw so clearly. Her family feared that her long-standing habits were wearing down her body, something that Angela herself didn't seem ready to acknowledge.
I think Angela is bringing a lot of problem to Michael. And with what I'm seeing, Angela is very selfish.
Even as her health got worse, Angela found it difficult to accept that her lifestyle was taking such a toll. Years of drinking and smoking weren't just side effects of her high-profile life, they were coping mechanisms she leaned on heavily. Family members, especially her children and grandchildren, began to feel helpless watching her decline. Her frail appearance, labored breathing, and lack of energy were all warning signs that the woman who once thrived on drama and conflict was starting to lose herself. Her family could only stand by for so long. As Angela's health visibly declined, so did her relationships with her loved ones. Seeing no other options, Angela's family decided to take matters into their own hands, staging several interventions in an effort to reach her. These interventions weren't easy, they were emotionally charged, with her family voicing their pain and frustration over watching her spiral. Angela's grandchildren were quite affected. They were once able to look up to her as an energetic, larger-than-life grandmother, but now they saw her struggling. Their innocent perspectives added an even more painful layer to the family's worries as they tried to protect the younger family members from Angela's declining health. The family's interventions often ended in explosive arguments, with Angela's temper flaring up as she dismissed their concerns. These painful discussions rarely got through to her, leaving her family feeling defeated. But even with everyone's desperate pleas, Angela's walls were up until her family took matters into their own hands with one last intervention.
Text messages, oh, you're in pain, laugh out loud. Is that funny to you? You know the difference between you and I, Michael? I have a heart. I'm a mean bitch. I'll fight in a goddamn minute and I'll you. You have no heart, man.
When Angela walked in, she noticed the concerned faces of her family members. Her first reaction was to put up her defenses, claiming she was fine and didn't need help. Angela was ready to dismiss what she viewed as an overreaction from her family. But as the conversations went ahead, her walls began to crack. One by one, her family members shared stories of how her behavior had affected them, holding back nothing in their words. It was her eldest grandchild's plea that hit her hardest. With tears in their eyes, they expressed fears of losing their grandmother if she didn't make a change. Hearing this emotional confession from someone she loved and who had always looked up to her brought a moment of realization that Angela couldn't ignore. For the first time, Angela couldn't brush off the pain her actions had caused, and she knew this was her wake-up call. Listening to her family lay bare their concerns and fears was a moment of undeniable truth. Angela's bravado started to fade, replaced by a silence that spoke to the inner struggle she'd been carrying all along. She began to see the impact her choices had on the people she loved most and felt, maybe for the first time, the weight of responsibility. The intervention wasn't a quick fix, but it was the beginning of her accepting that things couldn't continue the way they were. Despite reaching a point of acknowledgement, Angela wasn't exactly enthusiastic about the idea of rehab. Her first reaction was reluctant, viewing it as unnecessary and a sign of weakness. After all, Angela had built a reputation for toughness and resilience, and admitting she needed help didn't come easily. But the reality she was now facing became impossible to ignore. She could see the desperation in her family's faces, and the thought of letting them down began to break through her initial resistance. It dawned on her that rehab might actually be her only shot at regaining control of her life and rebuilding the relationships she'd almost lost. Slowly, she came to realize that rehab wasn't about giving up, it was about taking back control and fighting for herself and her family. Agreeing to go was a big step, but the journey ahead wasn't any easier. Rehab presented Angela with challenges she hadn't expected, each day pushing her to confront painful truths she'd long buried. Therapy sessions forced her to unpack years of unresolved emotions, and at first, Angela pushed back hard, frustrated by the probing questions and exercises that made her feel vulnerable. Her anger and resistance flared up repeatedly, almost like a defense mechanism, as she tried to avoid the uncomfortable truths therapy was bringing to light. The initial weeks were a blend of frustration and self-doubt, with Angela often questioning if this process was even worth it. But as she settled in, breakthroughs began to happen. Angela started realizing that her habits weren't just about a love of alcohol or cigarettes, they were coping mechanisms for unaddressed issues. These were tools she'd used to cover up the pain she'd felt over the years, even before 90-Day Fiancé. Therapy started to bring to the surface feelings of insecurity, moments of past hurt, and a fear of vulnerability that had driven much of her behavior. Gradually, she began to see her struggles with control and addiction as symptoms of a battle within herself, one she hadn't been willing to face until now. The realization wasn't easy, but it was necessary for Angela to start healing.
Being in a relationship, that's what you have to do in order to feel like you're in control, then you're in the wrong relationship. And for those that are going through in the relationship, you need to get out. Because if you think for 1 minute that it's going to change just because one day it's all roses and candy, and then the next minute you guys are back at it again. I'm telling you, it never changes. It never changes when it comes to and it's always going to be like the hardest part is leaving and never looking back.
In rehab, Angela finally faced the impact of her actions, not just on herself, but on her family and Michael. As she worked through therapy, she began to see the effect her behavior had created over the years. The confrontations, the outbursts, and the stubborn attitude she'd worn as armor had pushed people away, especially those who had been there for her through thick and thin. This new clarity wasn't easy. It meant looking closely at her past mistakes, and Angela wasn't one to admit fault lightly. But as she sat with the memories and revisited painful moments, she started to understand how her own actions had added to the struggles in her marriage with Michael. Her treatment didn't just focus on addiction, it pushed her to take responsibility, to see her role in the strained relationships around her. One of the most significant realizations Angela had was the weight of her behavior on her grandchildren. These were kids who looked up to her and had been affected by the very choices she thought she could keep hidden from them. She knew deep down that the path forward would require more than just words. Seeking forgiveness became an essential part of her journey, not as a quick fix, but as a genuine attempt to rebuild the trust she had damaged. Angela opened up to her family about her regrets, and it was clear that this time her words carried a depth they hadn't before. She realized that changing wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to commit to the process. From lashing out to looking inward, Angela's journey took her to a place of unexpected vulnerability, showing her a path she never thought she'd walk. Rehab became a space for Angela to start fresh and turn her realizations into action. As she regained a sense of purpose, her health began to follow suit. Breaking free from her reliance on cigarettes and alcohol, Angela saw small physical improvements that reminded her of her potential to rebuild. Recovery didn't promise perfection, and Angela knew there would be days when she'd slip or feel discouraged. But she also knew she was stronger with each passing day. Her fans noticed, with comments pouring in like, "Seeing Angela turn her life around gives me hope." And she's proving that change is possible. No matter how far down you've fallen, it was clear her journey resonated with viewers who had either faced similar struggles or simply admired her courage to make a change. But what do you guys think about this whole situation? Let me know your thoughts below on Angela's decision to step into rehab.